and dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.TV. Thank you for joining me this evening. Oh, the breaking news for today was Trump's announcement that we will now recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. And I know there's a lot of mixed feelings. I'll get to my take on it. But we'll go ahead and start off with the president's speech on this, and we'll go from there. So let me go ahead and get that queued up.
Thank you. When I came into office, I promised to look at the world's challenges with open eyes and very fresh thinking. We cannot solve our problems by making the same failed assumptions and repeating the same failed strategies of the past. Old challenges demand new approaches. My announcement today marks the beginning of a new approach to conflict between Israel and the Palestinians. In 1995, Congress adopted the Jerusalem Embassy Act, urging the federal government to relocate the American embassy to Jerusalem and to recognize that that city, and so importantly, is Israel's capital. This act passed Congress by an overwhelming bipartisan majority and was reaffirmed by a unanimous vote of the Senate only 6 months ago. Yet for over 20 years, every previous American president has exercised the law's waiver, refusing to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem or to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital city. Presidents issued these waivers under the belief that delaying the recognition of Jerusalem would advance the cause of peace. Some say they lacked courage, but they made their best judgment based on facts as they understood them at the time. Nevertheless, the record is in. After more than 2 decades of waivers, we are no closer to a lasting peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. It would be folly to assume that repeating the exact same formula would now produce a different or better result. Therefore, I have determined that it is time to officially recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. While previous presidents have made this a major campaign promise, they failed to deliver. Today, I am delivering. I've judged this course of action to be in the best interests of the United States of America and the pursuit of peace between Israel and the Palestinians. This is a long overdue step to advance the peace process and to work towards a lasting agreement. Israel is a sovereign nation with the right, like every other sovereign nation, to determine its own capital. Acknowledging this is a fact is a necessary condition for achieving peace. It was 70 years ago that the United States under President Truman recognized the State of Israel. Ever since then, Israel has made its capital in the city of Jerusalem, the capital the Jewish people established in ancient times. Today, Jerusalem is the seat of the modern Israeli government. It is the home of the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, as well as the Israeli Supreme Court. It is the location of the official residence of the Prime Minister and the President. It is the headquarters of many government ministries. For decades, visiting American presidents, secretaries of state, and military leaders have met their Israeli counterparts in Jerusalem, as I did on my trip to Israel earlier this year. Jerusalem is not just the heart of three great religions, but it is now also the heart of one of the most successful democracies in the world. Over the past 7 decades, the Israeli people have built a country where Jews, Muslims, and Christians, and people of all faiths are free to live and worship according to their conscience and according to their beliefs. Jerusalem is today and must remain a place where Jews pray at the Western Wall, where Christians walk the Stations of the Cross, and where Muslims worship at Al-Aqsa Mosque. However, through all of these years, presidents representing the United States have declined to officially recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. In fact, we have declined to acknowledge any Israeli capital at all. But today we finally acknowledge the obvious, that Jerusalem is Israel's capital. This is nothing more or less than a recognition of reality. It is also the right thing to do. It's something that has to be done. That is why, consistent with the Jerusalem Embassy Act, I am also directing the State Department to begin preparation to move the American Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This will immediately begin the process of hiring architects, engineers, and planners so that a new embassy, when completed, will be a magnificent tribute to peace. In making these announcements, I also want to make one point very clear. This decision is not intended in any way to reflect a departure from our strong commitment to facilitate a lasting peace agreement. We want an agreement that is a great deal for the Israelis and a great deal for the Palestinians. We are not taking a position of any final status issue. Taking a position of any final status issues, including the specific boundaries of the Israeli sovereignty in Jerusalem or the resolution of contested borders. Those questions are up to the parties involved. The United States remains deeply committed to helping facilitate a peace agreement that is acceptable to both sides. I intend to do everything in my power to help forge such an agreement. Without question, Jerusalem is one of the most sensitive issues in those talks. The United States would support a two-state solution if agreed to by both sides. In the meantime, I call on all parties to maintain the status quo at Jerusalem's holy sites, including the Temple Mount, also known as Haram al-Sharif. Above all, our greatest hope is for peace, the universal yearning in every human soul. With today's action, I reaffirm my administration's long-standing commitment to a future of peace and security for the region. There will, of course, be disagreement and dissent regarding this announcement. But we are confident that ultimately, as we work through these disagreements, we will arrive at a peace and a place far greater in understanding and cooperation. This sacred city should call forth the best in humanity, lifting our sights to what it is possible, not pulling us back and down to the old fights that have become so totally predictable. Peace is never beyond the grasp of those willing to reach it. So today we call for calm, for moderation, and for the voices of tolerance to prevail over the purveyors of hate. Our children should inherit our love, not our conflicts. I repeat the message I delivered at the historic and extraordinary summit in Saudi Arabia earlier this year. The Middle East is a region rich with culture, spirit, and history. Its people are brilliant, proud, and diverse, vibrant, and strong. But the incredible future awaiting this region is held at bay by bloodshed, ignorance, and terror. Vice President Pence will travel to the region in the coming days to reaffirm our commitment to work with partners throughout the Middle East to defeat radicalism that threatens the hopes and dreams of future generations. It is time for the many who desire peace to expel the extremists from their midst. It is time for all civilized nations and people to respond to disagreement with reasoned debate, not violence. And it is time for young and moderate voices all across the Middle East to claim for themselves a bright and beautiful future. So today, let us rededicate ourselves to a path of mutual understanding and respect. Let us rethink old assumptions and open our hearts and minds to possible and possibilities. And finally, I ask the leaders of the region, political and religious, Israeli and Palestinian, Jewish and Christian and Muslim, to join us in the noble quest for lasting peace. Thank you. God bless you. God bless Israel. God bless the Palestinians. And God bless the United States. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And then he goes on to sign it. Now, I've been bombarded kind of about both sides of this. You know, where do you stand on this? You know, isn't this good? Isn't this bad? You know, what's the consequences from this? What's really going to happen? Well, you know, the extremists, they're always going to use things like this, but it wouldn't even take this for the extremists to use it. They're already acting in extremist ways. I sure they will use this, as they use almost anything nowadays. But really, I don't stand on either side. I don't stand on the Palestinian side, and I don't stand on the Israeli side. I kind of equal it to apples and oranges, and you're asking me to vote which rotten one is better. I wouldn't know. I'm not tasting either of the rotten ones. I'm not buying into that. This is something that was already passed into law. Basically, what Trump's doing is saying we are no longer going to give it waivers. Every 6 months, they give this thing a waiver. And that's the only reason we have not claimed Jerusalem as Israeli capital. Because we constantly give it a waiver. We've been doing this for over 20 years. In the name of trying to create a peace agreement or, to have long-lasting peace over in the Middle East. Well, after 20 years, it didn't work. So even though I see it from the side going, this is a, big thing, it's only a big thing because other presidents haven't been willing to allow it to happen under their presidency because they didn't want to be known if this went awry. So, I guess hats off to him for, finally doing it since Congress already voted on this decades ago. So now we're at a point where, okay, now he's going to do it. Well, first, the embassy has to actually be built in Jerusalem. Until that happens, it's up for grabs because after 2020, who's going to be president? Is he still going to be president or not? We don't know. But if he doesn't have it built by then, and we do have a different president that disagrees with that, guess what? They're not going to build. They're going to continue to have our embassy in Tel Aviv. Even though all the business we do with the Israeli government is done in Jerusalem. So I see it from that side. There's a lot of misinformation out there about the history. Well, I'm not going to go that far down it because what's most important is what's now. We could go into the history of the United States and, it belonged to all the Native Americans. So get off your property, give it back to the Native Americans, and go back to England. No, it doesn't, you can't just say that. Well, you can say it, but you can't just, do that without some type of violent, authoritarian, conflict or war. It's just not going to happen. But on the other hand, I think there should have been a compromise. Okay, we'll recognize it. But guess what? No more settlement expansion. Matter of fact, if you want to continue your expansion, we'll just go back to Tel Aviv. Because doing that would send a statement to the other side saying, hey, Israel backed out of their deal and, well, we're not going to sit here and keep backing them up if they can't hold on to their agreement. And there's a lot of, I'm not for this, let's keep expanding Israel. But I also see it from their side, you continue to get attacked, you go, okay, every time you attack us, we're going to come in, we're going to kick you out, we're going to take over that territory. Oh, you keep attacking us, yep, we're going to keep expanding. Then I could see from the other side where you got a lot of innocent people going, listen, we're not a part of this, but we also don't want to be a part of Israel. So, there is so much mess over there that you're not going to fix it. And we know 20 years of having a waiver passed so we wouldn't claim or, recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. That's not going to stop or start anything. Because that's going to continue whether we do this or not. But I think the president's playing a game. He might be playing it pretty good too. Time will only tell. But he's went over to Saudi Arabia, which that's a regime that's very nasty. We'll put it at that. But he went over there, made whatever deals or agreements over there with them, flattered them. Then he goes and flatters Israel. What he's saying is, listen, I'm not picking sides. You can either help America out or get out of our way. That's a game I think he's trying out on the world stage. What'll happen, I don't know. Definitely don't listen to American mainstream media because they'll tell you how everything's so bad about Trump. Why don't you listen to the people over in a lot of these countries? If they're sounding any different from the people on the left here in America, they're saying, I might not like the guy, but he's not doing too bad. I think he says stupid stuff. I don't think I would want to hang out with the guy, but I think he's made some good policy. He's made some bad policy. I don't see why the media treats him much different than any other president because they all do about the same crap. They make some good policies and some bad policies. And I think that's why people were asking me about this from both sides. I get people from the left thinking I'm going to, hate this because, that's atrocious to Palestine. Then I get people from the other side going, yeah, you're probably glad that he finally did this, I get people from both sides because, well, at times I agree with things that liberals agree with. Sometimes I agree with things conservatives agree with. That's why I think there's a lot of people that are able to talk to me that if I, was just a Republican, they probably wouldn't talk to me. Or if I was just a Democrat, that those people wouldn't talk to me. But because I'm a libertarian, I'm looking at each issue as an individual issue. And I'm looking at it in the eyes of freedom. Hemp and marijuana. Well, hemp you can't even get high off of. Marijuana, it has our treatments. They can sit there and turn opium into a pill and call Oxycontin and sell the hell out of it. To the point now we have an opioid epidemic across the nation. That's led people that no longer can get the pills because we finally started cracking down on it. Well, too late. You already got, a pretty large portion of the United States hooked on, Oxycontin and all these other opioids. And now they can't get the pills, so now they're going to heroin. Great job. But marijuana is so bad. So I've sided with liberals when it comes to legalization of hemp and marijuana. Well, I think that's people's choices. We don't You know, we seen what Prohibition did with alcohol. I don't drink. Very rarely do I ever drink. And when I do, I don't get drunk. I have a beer, maybe a shot with someone. That's about it. But I'm not going to, you know, tell people they can't drink, even though I rarely ever drink. Once, maybe a year. Might have a shot with someone at New Year's or something. But I've seen alcoholism in my own family, you know, destroy people's lives. So I tend not to, you know, like alcohol. I don't like, you know, people that are always drinking all the time. To me, it's not good. It's disgusting. It's not healthy. There was a lot of bad stuff about it. I'm not going to tell them not to do it. That's not my right to tell them what to put in their body. But don't ask me and call me or tell me I'm not empathetic to you, that you might be suffering because of the years of drug abuse or alcohol abuse. Choices you make. Shoot, I'm addicted to caffeine. I don't expect anybody to, you know, cry for me because I, you know, have whatever condition when I'm, you know, 80, 90 years old, if I make it that long. You know, I like coffee. That's just, you know, there's a lot of bad stuff. You know, I know people that eat too much meat with absolutely no vegetables and then wonder why they feel like crap all the time. You know, it's just one of those deals. We all make choices. I don't think that choices that you make for your personal body that aren't affecting anybody else should be the government's business. Now, alcohol. If you get drunk, not the government's business. If you go break into someone's house because you're drunk, something you normally wouldn't do, but because you were drunk, you went and broke in the house. Alcohol is still not the government's problem. It's a choice that you made that's the government's problem. You broke in the house. Why did you break into the house? Because it was drunk. So you made a choice to get drunk, knowing that usually people that get drunk do stupid crap. You made that choice. But I'm not going to go after you for drinking. I'm going to go after you for breaking in the house. But I normally wouldn't have done that. But you did. It's because I was drunk. You made the choice to get drunk. It's not the drinking. It's your choice that you made that put yourself in a situation that you end up breaking into someone's house. Now, where the empathy comes into play is to say, you know, you broke into their house and you fell asleep on their couch. Okay, you're paying for that window. I might levy another fine against you to kind of, I might berate you there, but, you know, I'm not going to throw you into jail for, you know, a period of time, definitely if it's your first offense. Now, if you break into the house and you hurt someone or you break other things, then you're paying for that. And if you decide to get drunk and get violent, guess what? You probably will get jail time. So it's really, it comes down to, you know, choices. Now, America recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. You know, that's why I, you know, became a, you know, extremist or whatever. You made the choice to become an extremist. Don't blame it on that. Because guess what, everybody? Israel already claims Jerusalem as their capital. we can pretend to ignore that, but that'd be like another country going, yeah, D.C. is not America's capital. Nope, we don't recognize it. Nope. We're going to make New Orleans America's capital. That's where we're going to put our embassy. Yeah, I know we'll have to travel to D.C. to do any government stuff, but, you know, we just don't want to recognize D.C. as America's capital. People be like, okay. So now you got a building in New Orleans. You have to fly every day to D.C. Whatever. So again, you know, choices that either side makes after this are on them. It's not on, you know, Trump going, oh, we'll recognize it now and move our embassy. That'd be like China going, oh, we have one in New Orleans, but now we'll finally recognize Washington, D.C. as America's capital, and we'll move our embassy there. Yeah, you idiots, you probably should have done that a long time ago. You're wasting money flying. Or carpooling, whatever the, you know, case would be. I'm going to get in this Ron Paul Liberty Report. Israel's capital, who decides?
Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams. Daniel, good to see you.
How are you this morning, Dr. Paul?
Doing fine. Good. All set for our program.
Good.
Easy little subject about where people should put their capitals. And obviously, I'm referring to the fact that they're in the news today. We hear, as a matter of fact, Trump is supposed to make a speech at 1 o'clock declaring his position that the United States will move their capital from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And ordinarily, there's not much said about where the capitals are. I mean, nobody really argues with a country where capitals are placed. They just do it. Why is it, do you think, that this one is so controversial? When did this trouble all start?
Well, it started a long time ago, actually. But, you know, this Jerusalem has always been a city of the three major monotheistic faiths, you know, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. And when Israel was created, it was determined that it would be an international city so that there would be no ownership by one entity. But I guess the UN would be where it starts, isn't it?
You know, and that was back in 1947, and they created the state of Israel as well as the capital, and it was to be an international, or Jerusalem was to be an international city. But then and I guess it would have been 92 in the election when Clinton was elected, he had made a promise very similar to the promise that President Trump made, that he would, change the policy. We would move the capital. I don't know how we move the capital, but we would recognize Jerusalem as the capital and move our embassy from Tel Aviv, which was a big deal, and it was very popular with certain groups, but it was also controversial too. But Clinton followed through, and the Congress went with him, and they passed the law in 1995, which essentially said the capital will be moved. Our embassy will be moved to Jerusalem. But even then, it was controversial, and they backed off, and then they put a loophole in there that it could be, if it isn't certified every 6 months, it can be decertified, and there'd be a 6-month delay. And they've been doing that ever since 1995. I went back and read a little bit about the controversy going on there, because all the major magazines talked about it. It was a big issue. And there was a statement in Foreign Policy that talked about this. I want to quote a little bit from that. Foreign Policy observed, hope was high that this momentum would lead to a lasting peace, and the Clinton administration argued that a premature focus on Jerusalem could undermine negotiations and complicate the chances for peace. So they were working for peace. They wanted to take the political position, and they understood the danger, which is not a whole lot different today, but there are some who believe, at least Trump doesn't believe it's going to do harm and move in the right direction. But then there was a little bit more politicking going on back then. You can't imagine. And this had to do with Bob Dole. He was leader in the Senate, and he was going to run for the president in '96, I guess. Some that saw that the law. This is what was recorded in time. This quote. This is all about vote counting in the coming U.S. election. A Palestinian minister said, adding that he believes supporting the bill would help Dole fundraising with Jewish groups in the 1996 presidential race. And as the Time article later on noted, Dole had in fact opposed the bill until this year. So I imagine that sounds political, and so it's been there, but I'm sure there's some very sincere people who believe that they're doing the right thing and that has to be done. And the one thing you can say is Clinton followed through and had something done. They decided, well, we better be cautious, and that's why we had this loophole in there. They didn't have to do it, but the Congress, we can't argue with the Congress, acting upon this. But here they are again, really at the same position. And Trump, I wished he'd do it more often, especially when he took a position that we liked. He'd stick with it. But he has stuck with this, and he's making this announcement. But it looks like there's going to be some ramification from this. It's not perfect, smooth sailing the way I see it.
Well, the issue is the fact that East Jerusalem is recognized by the Palestinians as the capital of their future state. And also that territory was taken by Israel in the 67 war. So it technically is not Israeli territory. So imagine naming somewhere as your capital that is not part of your country. And that's certainly how not just the Palestinians, but essentially the rest of the world, aside from the U.S. now, sees this, which is you can't simply put your capital on someone else's territory. And that's the real controversy. It started in 67. As you point out, politics plays a role. U.S. domestic politics plays a role in perpetuating the situation. But now the issue of if Trump does say we are moving, what does it mean technically? He is supposedly signing another 6-month waiver, which his predecessors have done since 95. Is it a lot of talk? Is it a lot of hot air? Or is he going to literally start moving the embassy from Tel Aviv, which is the capital recognized by the rest of the world, to Jerusalem?
As soon as he said he was going to move it, and then he says, I'm going to sign the waiver, I thought he's getting wiggle room. And he still may be doing that. He might be able to do that, but you can't tell. But right now, the people who oppose this are certainly sounding off. All the Arab countries are sounding off, about how horrible this would be. And our government, even the Trump government, recognizing that there's going to be greater danger to Americans, that they should be very cautious at the embassies, and they're beefing up security. So it is recognized that it's rather dangerous, but I think it's actually too soon to say, yes, you can expect they'll start the trucks moving equipment here next month or 2 months, and they've recognized that you don't do that just with turning a switch. And so it's going to be a while, but I guess it won't be too long, and that we'll know more. And, of course, the speech that Trump will give today will be significant and actually reveal the tone. But his speech, just like how this all came about, there's always politics involved. So he sometimes can, have a tone that is different than what the policy would actually be. So I think the speech today could be important.
Could be important. And, some will claim, and I think there's probably some basis for this, that now the Trump administration, when you take this declaration, which literally nobody in the world except for Benjamin Netanyahu and his people are happy about, when you take this into the same context of the Russiagate, which really became Israelgate, because what it turns out, Jared Kushner told Michael Flynn, you got to try to get the UN Security Council, you got to pressure them to vote against this UN resolution condemning Israeli building on occupied territories. because remember the Clintons or the Obamas were going to abstain for the first time, and so there was a danger of this condemnation passing. So Kushner had Flynn get on the phone and try to pressure Russia and other countries to vote against it. So this is two very, very public interventions on behalf of Israel. It's going to give the impression to a lot of the rest of the Western world, or the rest of the world, certainly the Muslim world, that the U.S. is not an honest broker in this situation.
And, this is a slight challenge to what you said, that nobody else is supporting the United States. But I think in just what you said, there is an indication, some people claim, that the Saudis are very much, with the United States.
That's interesting.
On this. And but the European Union are not on our side on this. The European Union, just like Syria and Iran, they're not exactly with us on those positions.
Well, Boris Johnson is very, very pro-Israel. He's the UK foreign minister, very pro-Israel, always has been. He spoke out against the move. He says, this is a destabilizing, this is a kind of a dangerous thing. Don't jump into this. So it's not just people who, it's a lot of pro-Israel people. They don't want to see the region explode again, which is possible. We've already seen demonstrations among Palestinians. Interestingly enough, here's someone that no one talks about, the Palestinian Christians. They're going to be hurt by this move. And I think, a lot of American Christians are very, very one-sided toward Israel. I think they forget that there are Palestinian Christians there. They're going to be very unhappy about this as well.
I've been challenged over the years because I don't take positions. I'm pro-anti as much as pro-American, non-interventionist, and hope and work for peace. But I think that my theory, I work on the theory that our policies, well-intended, very political, have a lot of angles to it, and the intention, really a sincere intention, is to help Israel, protect Israel, and this sort of thing. But I've maintained that, just endless foreign aid and of military systems and doing so much tends to backfire. Take, for instance, the involvement that we've been involved in since 9/11 in the various wars. They've been supported by Israel. But has Israel won a whole lot from our involvement over there? I mean, Saudi Arabia, they're closer to Saudi Arabia, and we're close to Saudi Arabia, and Trump has been consistently opposed to Iran. But Iran is in a better position now than it has been in a long time. So I think that though it might be challenging to take a position which is more neutral and non-interventionist, that there could be an argument made that be careful about getting what you wish for, because it might not be as helpful to Israel as they think. And even these expressions and reservations over these last couple decades has to be because how fast can we go? If we go too fast, maybe it will hurt us. And I think they understand what I'm saying.
Well, we were kind of joking before the show. We wondered if maybe Netanyahu was feeling the same way, that, this is, thanks guys, but this might be a bridge too far. Of course, he's very vocally in favor of it, but it might be a bit too much
right.
of what he was wishing for.
And there's been quite a few countries come out against this, and this is a touchy situation, but we were sort of postulating, well, what could the ultimate results be, and could it in any way benefit the United States? Well, when we asked that question, can it really benefit our national defense, and national security and our budget? No, not really. But, you mentioned that in your first statement, that the United States is losing credibility. If they, in many of their policies, and maybe in this step, well, maybe we'll lose enough credibility that we'll start. Well, maybe there is another option. Maybe we should be less interventionist. Maybe we shouldn't be telling everybody what to do. Maybe we shouldn't be the decider on exactly where the capital of Israel should be. And in that case, we could look at on the other side that if we were less dogmatic and less the bully policeman of the world, I don't think that's all that bad.
We should be honest with the audience. What we did before the show was we played a little game when we were talking about the show, and we said, okay, you name what you think the silver lining is, and I'll name what I said. And you said, you go first. I said, no, you go first. And so you went first, and you said that. That's exactly what I had written down. So we were thinking the same thing. If this means that the U.S. because we may have lost credibility as an honest broker, if this means that we will have to pull out of the process, stop pushing, bullying each side around, then that will be a positive thing. But the other things, though, to consider, and the other thing we haven't talked about, actually, that we should a little bit, is Turkey, is Erdogan and Turkey, because this could be a big deal. And this is a real gamble, because is he just full of hot air? King Abdullah of Jordan as well. Are they just full of hot air saying, if you do this, we may break relations with Israel. This is going to ignite a fire. The end, we don't know where the end is. Are they just talking, or are they going to follow through? Is Turkey really going to follow through, break ties with Israel, and get very unfriendly to the U.S.? This is a gamble too, and it could inflame a larger war.
And I think that this isn't the first time we talked about the significance of Turkey, especially dealing with Syria. But the statement was made, a fire with no end in sight.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And that's a pretty bold statement to say this could go a long time. And a fire is a fire of violence, I believe. So Turkey is really in the middle of all this, geographically and politically. They're part of NATO, and yet at the same time they're our allies. At the same time, there's a struggle on these particular issues. But I don't think that if there was a vote by the various countries and everybody had a vote, what would happen? Be interesting. Do you think everybody's going to go to the UN and have a vote on this now? Since the UN helped create this problem, I wonder how they would vote now. I don't think there'd be many votes on our side of this. You think?
Yeah, not on the U.S. side. And, this is another example. It sort of reminds me in a way of the Iran nuclear certification. The U.S. has decided to go it alone, not caring what the rest of the world does. And in some cases, that's the right thing to do. But this is another example where that is the case. But I would say really my final thoughts are, I wonder what's in it for us. As you say, we're not pro or anti other countries. We're pro-U.S. What is in it for the U.S. to do this? And I wonder, other than our little silver lining, which is shared by non-interventionists, I wonder what about the U.S. security? What about our security around the world? If you really do something, if you're going to poke 1.2 billion Muslims around the rest of the world in the eye and see if they poke back, that really concerns me. You talk about 9/11, you talk about terrorist attacks. I think it's dangerous to pour gasoline on the fire. I can't help but thinking this is what they're doing.
Yes, and I think those are realistic concerns. Most empires come down because of internal problems, conflict internally, failure of their economic system, flat-out bankruptcy, and I think that's what we're approaching. I don't think there's any reason to fear an invasion or a bombing of this country, but I do fear the loss of liberties at this country with the atmosphere that exists. And I believe that the financial situation is deteriorating, and it's much worse than people admit. But when you look at what Washington is doing, trying to pass a tax package and a spending package, you realize that they're at stalemate. So I do believe this is a major crisis coming up, and this is a part of it, and the empire is going to be dealt with one way or the other. We believe that getting rid of the empire would be much better for our national security than expanding it and financing it when we have no money. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today to the Liberty Report. Please come back soon.
Ron Paul, excuse me, Ron Paul Liberty Report, RonPaulLibertyReport.com, and Ron Paul Liberty Report on YouTube. Check them out, subscribe. Now, they have a little bit different take on it than I do, but honestly, it's one of those deals that this isn't something that Trump's doing. This is something Congress did a long time ago. So to place this on Trump's shoulders, you know what? Because other presidents acted cowardly to actually allow it to implement. Well, you know what? Until he actually does this, because again, our 6-month waiver, until this actually happens, it's just talk. And with all the talk going on around the world, and then where people stand on the talk, the talk's all BS to me. And again, until there's a embassy in Jerusalem. If he keeps signing waivers, guess what? Next president, they're going to be like, well, we don't agree with what Trump said, and since our embassy's already in Tel Aviv, we don't see any reason to build one in Jerusalem that we don't claim as a capital. Well, guess what? Israel claims as a capital. When America seceded from Great Britain, when we became our own country, we didn't go all the way to California. That came after the fact. So to play those little games, I just, I don't buy into it. Guess what? Half of Jerusalem has already been ran by, Israel. Guess what? They already claim it's their capital. What we do is not going to make a difference when it comes to, we're going to put our little building in Tel Aviv. Or, hey, we're going to put our little building in Jerusalem. Guess what? The conflicts there have been going on. They'll keep going on. And really it comes down to, how about this? Let's bring back our money to America. Stop giving financial aid to Israel and ISIS and Saudi Arabia. Whatever countries you're doling out money to, stop. Because it doesn't matter what we say or where we put our embassy buildings in every country. Stop supporting all these countries and you won't have to pick a side. Just say, hey, we need a building somewhere in your country to do our business, have our relations. And people are like, well, by doing that, you're going to encourage Israel to keep... Guess what? They're already expanding. Right now, as we speak, I'm sure they're taking over new plot. Guess what? We can talk all we want, but again, Israel's a nuclear country. About the only option we would have to go against Israel is to start supporting every extremist terrorist group that surrounds Israel. Not a good idea. Obama was already doing that in a minuscule amount to try to take Syria. Look at how many millions of people were displaced, killed, or, injured. We had Turkey here. People talk crap about Israel, and yeah, I think their lobby should be shut down here in America. I don't think that other foreign countries should be able to lobby our government. That's our government. You want to lobby us? You put out your little propaganda piece and see if we believe it. Let us make that decision what policies we have here in America. So, get rid of the lobbies, get rid of the support of all these countries. Because we have Turkey embassy here. We're in America. You can claim the Turkish embassy is Turkish ground, whatever you want. Turkish security, police, whatever you want to call them, crossed the street where there were peaceful protesters and started beating the hell out of them, kicking them in the head, doing all this. We did nothing. Turkey's one of the, big exporters of terrorism. Turkey is the country that terrorists basically pass through to go into Europe, and as they're passing through, they are basically, a lot of them probably already, into that extremist ideology, but they're bolstered through Turkey. Turkey has basically been the pathway for a lot of these people to get into Europe that don't have good intentions, that aren't escaping anything, that their sole purpose is to basically have a beachhead in different countries of Europe and the United States and Canada. I think that's what pees me off most about the left is, I'm for immigration. I think we should allow people to come to this country. I think that's, good. But do you understand what is going on? That this isn't a country invading us. This is a secular Muslim extremist religion that doesn't want to come and save everybody. They want to come and kill people. Sorry, not my religion. I don't claim any, certain religion. I just go on my morals, what I believe is good and right. Sorry. Hence why I'm a libertarian. You forcing people to do things at the end of the barrel is not freedom, and it's not right. It's wrong. Now, I do got some articles I do want to kind of get into here, but I wish I would have been on last Friday. I had work come up, so I had to go take care of some stuff. But maybe I'll get into it this Friday. A little bit drawn out. It's not so simple. Again, I'll get into all that later on. So, before I get into this one article, I have another clip I want to go ahead and knock out of the way here. If I can get you fast enough. Okay, sorry it's taking me so long. Now, one thing that has been, pushed is Trump's tax plan. It's going to hurt all the poor people. And there's so much misinformation out there about the tax plan. It's been a lot for me to sift through. And both sides, basically, slowly as I'm getting through some of it, both sides are just lying about it. Just flat out lying about it. And then they're kind of misconstruing other things. But I want to get into this clip I had from Stefan Molyneux covering this. So I already have that queued up here. We'll go ahead and get into this and I'll cover it after the clip.
Have you ever tried to help a really crazy person? Ever? It's a wild and dispiriting ride. I knew a woman when I was younger. She had some really, really out there beliefs. Let's just say she was not exactly in my life by choice. And I tried to help her. I tried to talk her out of her crazy beliefs. And naturally there was this escalations, rage, and so on. So then I tried another tactic. I remember, and I thought, I know, I'll do this in a public place because that will be safer. And we went to Pizza Hut, and I said, something like this. I said, listen, I understand you feel hunted, you feel persecuted, you feel like people are out to get you. I'm not going to fight with you about any of that anymore. Let's just say it's all true. I accept it. Now, being hunted, being pursued in this kind of manner is very stressful. And maybe what you can do is you can read a couple of books on stress. Like there's a library right across the street. We can go over there right now. You can read a couple of books on stress so that you can figure out how to minimize the stress that this persecution is causing you. And she went nuts. And she threw a pitcher of water at me. And let's just say things did not go well from there. And that's what it's like when you can clearly see how someone's belief system is going to make them both dangerous and miserable, two things that often go hand in hand. If you've ever tried to talk someone out of crazy beliefs, when you know clear as daylight, as certain as the sun rises tomorrow, you know that their beliefs are going to make them miserable and alone and bitter, and it's going to just destroy their life, that their life is going to be like this little flower, and their belief system is like this big, giant bulldozer that is just going to plow it under the wet earth of regret. And you try and talk them out. Have you ever tried that? If you haven't, I'm not suggesting it's fun, but it can be very, very instructive to spend time with people who would rather they be right than happy. And this all came to my mind when I woke up this morning and found that the Senate has passed in the U.S. these huge revisions to the U.S. tax code. I think it was around 2 o'clock in the morning, using not dissimilar tactics than the Democrats used to push through Obamacare. Now, of course, the Democrats are outraged that their tactics are being used against them, which is what I have been suggesting for quite some time. Hopefully people out there are listening. And, of course, there was a lot of internal divisions. Suddenly you see the Democrats were very, very concerned with deficits and with debt. And it is kind of a funny thing to watch Democrats pretend to be concerned about deficits, kind of like watching Michael Moore pretending to care about calories. Now, the bill includes about $1.4 trillion in tax cuts. That is the lowest or the biggest tax cut in American history. So that's quite a lot. And given how much taxes have ballooned over the past generation or so, it's really, it doesn't return things back down the ladder that much. It's like when they say, austerity, it's austerity. Well, if a guy's been living on 10,000 calories a day and then you say 9,000 calories is your limit, I don't think he gets to scream starvation diet. Maybe he does, but who's going to take him seriously? Now, America has one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world at 35%. And the goal is to reduce it to 20 and the low 20s, whether it's going to be 20 or 22 or whatever, it remains to be seen. And the high corporate tax rate is one of the reasons why there's this drive for cheap third world labor to come into the country, because when the corporate taxes are very high, well, then corporations need to find other ways to save money. And so bringing in skilled or unskilled labor from the third world, the H-1B visas and all that kind of stuff, is one of the ways that they fight back against this ridiculously high corporate tax rate. And there's going to be a reshaping of international business tax rules, and there's going to be a lowering of individual taxes. But don't worry, folks, it's only temporary. You remember how all those tax increases are temporary? Well, now it turns out that the tax lowering is temporary as well. There's other things embedded. They want to open up the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to oil drilling, which environmentalists should be very, very happy about, because the West is going to consume oil, and particularly if you want massive third world immigration into your country, well, you're going to have to provide housing and roads and cars and schooling and education and healthcare and so on. All of that is massively consumptive of energy, so the environmentalists should be overjoyed, because now money isn't pouring into repressive Middle Eastern regimes. Feminists should be overjoyed because money isn't being poured into female repressing Middle Eastern regimes, but instead is going to be kept local. And also, of course, there won't be this big, giant, dangerous super tankers as much floating back and forth across the ocean just waiting to spill their guts on all the innocent wildlife you could lay your coat of oil on. So everybody should be happy. Of course they're not, which we'll get to. So another big deal is the repealing of the mandate that individuals purchase health insurance. And that knocks out one of the central tunnel supports in the 2010 Obamacare, Affordable Care Act. And this is really quite something. This, you're breathing, therefore you have to buy something, is such a violation of property rights and personal freedoms that it is truly astonishing that it passed, well, not astonishing given the stranglehold that the left has on the media and had, of course, on the U.S. government, but it is such a violation of basic private property that this is going to put a big hole in the support structure for Obamacare. And it is truly astounding, too, because this is a massive tax. Like if you don't buy your health insurance, you have to pay a tax. Somehow, Obama and his minions were so incompetent when it came to raising taxes that the taxes were going to cost the government about $340 billion over 10 years. Now, that is quite an inefficient tax, to put it mildly. So that's going to be fascinating. For those, of course, who don't know, one of the great moments of rational cynicism regarding the government was in Canada here, when I first began to really learn about taxes. I was told that taxes in Canada were introduced, I think it was 1917, as a temporary war measure. Temporary war measure. So don't worry. I guess you just have to have perpetual war to keep your war measure going, which is one of the things that has happened. When the income tax first came into America, only 1% of Americans had to pay it. It was never, ever, ever intended or sold as a tax that most Americans would pay. Now, of course, this is returning or not stealing at gunpoint the money that people have earned, hopefully, in the free market. And as it respects people's hard work, it respects their capacity to save, it makes education more valuable by lowering taxes. It does all kinds of wonderful things. Thou shalt not steal is been expanded slightly in the American economy, so naturally the Democrats oppose it tooth and nail. So here's a little run-through of Democrats and their history. So there was the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery, which had 100% Republican support and only 23% Democrat support. There was the 14th Amendment that gave citizenship to freed slaves. It had 94% Republican support and 0% Democrat support. The 15th Amendment, which gave voting for everyone 100% Republican support, 0% Democrat support. So if your bill is being opposed by Democrats, historically, let's just say, history may look somewhat kindly on it. Now, the Senate plan cuts the corporate tax rate 35% to 20% or so in 2019. The House plan does so in 2018. And both of these plans, they cut income tax rates, they double the standard deductions, and eliminate personal exemptions, a variety of personal exemptions. There was, of course, a goal to have fewer tax brackets. The Senate plan keeps the current 7 income tax brackets, but lowers some of these rates. And they revert to the current rate in 2025. Now, this lowering of the maximum corporate tax rate from 35% to 20% or so, the Senate wants to delay this change until 2019 because they say, well, we want to save $100 billion in revenue loss. And that is, I mean, talk about a false dichotomy. If you lower taxes and you increase economic activity and you get more people off welfare, more people into the workforce, then they're not consuming from the body politic, they're contributing to the body politic. So the idea that anybody knows how this is going to go, and there are all these projections out there. I mean, I actually take global warming projections more seriously than I do economic projections. If anybody knew where the economy was going, they would be multi-zillionaires. You know, it's just funny to me. I know where the economy is going to go. How much do you have in the bank? $50,000. Then you don't. Because if you know where the economy is going to go, then you know where to invest. You know where companies are going to go. You're going to make a complete and total fortune. So anyone who doesn't functionally own the planet, Dr. Evil style, I don't care what they say about the future of the economy, with the one exception that I did talk about Bitcoins when they were very, very cheap. So I hope you listened. Now, of course, the U.S. does have one of the highest corporate tax rates in the world, but Most corporations don't pay much more than about 15%. Why? Because they can bank stuff offshore, they have all these subsidiaries, they can shuffle stuff around, they have massively high-priced tax attorneys who can help them avoid paying the 35%. So another way of understanding, people say, oh, it's cheating, it's cheating. No. Here's what you need to understand about the corporate tax rate. Big corporations love it. Big corporations love it because they can afford to lobby. They have the existing relationships with government to make sure that they find ways around the rules. They have high-priced tax lawyers, they have high-priced attorneys, they have high-priced accountants, which allow them to bypass the Byzantine maze of regulations and end up paying low taxes. Not many mom-and-pop shows have massive subsidiaries overseas that they can shuffle money around. They don't have big offshore bank accounts. So big companies love more and more complex and high-priced regulations because it discourages other people, smaller companies, more nimble companies, from interfering in their racket, from stepping into their turf. It keeps competition at bay. If you can overcomplicate things, well, they've got the high-priced people to keep their taxes down and make sure they're compliant. So when they look at a stack of regulations, they see a stack of money. When you look at a stack of regulations, you're like, oh, well, I could start my own business, but it's very dangerous, and I can't possibly read all that stuff. And maybe I'll just go work for someone else. And so what happens is then you end up paying for all of these high-priced people to keep taxes low by having your salary reduced to pay for their salaries. And you end up working for people rather than competing with people, which companies like. So it keeps entrepreneurs leashed to a company, and it reduces competition. So this is going to be extraordinarily good for smaller businesses, for people who want to do startups, and people who hire a lot of people in the world. Now, there is, and I'm just reading some of the comments about this stuff, there's this kind of false dichotomy that floats around with this stuff. They say the Senate plan would help businesses more than individuals. And through 2027, business taxes would be lower overall, but individual taxes at every income level would increase by 2027. Oh, this class-baiting crap. I mean, there's a reason why they don't teach you any basic economics in junior high school, which is where they should. I mean, you could eliminate socialism in one generation. Boom! At least among competent and intelligent people. You could eliminate socialism in one generation. The simple way to do it is do something called Marxism. That's M-A-R-K-S-I-S-M, Marxism. So what you do is, let's say the kids are, what's the first year where your grades matter for university? Like when you're 15 or so, or 16. So let's say 1 year before that. Or if kids don't learn that lesson, make it 1 year when their grades begin to count for university. What you do is you say to the kids this. You say, okay, kids, this class is a class on economics. And you just teach the class regular old ways. And then what happens is, maybe halfway through the semester, or halfway through the year if it's a full year course, what you do is you say, okay, thanks everyone for working so hard, for studying, for learning this stuff, and for earning your individual marks. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take all of your marks and we're going to put them into a big bucket. And then what we're going to do is we're going to hand out these marks to everyone. Right? So if we've got 10,000 marks, we've got 100 students or whatever, like you do the math, and you say, okay, no one's going to get their individual marks anymore. Everyone's going to contribute their marks into a big bucket, and we're going to distribute these marks evenly among the students. And then what you do is you see what happens on the next test. You see what happens for the remainder of the course. Now, everybody knows, of course, my daughter at the age of 6 understood this completely and totally. It's really not that complicated. You know exactly what's going to happen. What's going to happen is people are just going to stop studying. And so the total number of marks that was there, because people had individual rewards, they responded to the incentive of marks to do the work and so on. They worked hard because profits were going to accrue to themselves individually. Then people are just going to stop working, they're going to stop studying, they're going to try and free ride off everyone else, and there'll be virtually no marks to distribute. And then you say, okay, explain to me why people stopped studying. Explain to me why the total number of marks, which was high in the first half of the course, explain to me why the total number of marks collapsed and there was nothing left to distribute by the end of the class. Now, if you can explain that successfully, you pass the course. And if you can't, you fail. So, and everybody will be able to understand it, and then everybody will understand why socialism and Marxism doesn't work. Marxism, look for it. It's what should be happening. Because there's this false dichotomy. Oh, the corporations, these big, sinister, Leandri-style monstrosities, they're getting away with murder and they're shafting me. Listen, corporate taxes go down. Corporations have more money to invest, more money to grow. They have more money to pay their employees more. And so that's the way it works. That's the way it works. Right now, of course, corporations eliminate a lot of the taxes or reduce the taxes by putting money overseas, by not expanding, by not growing. And it makes corporations lazy. Now, corporations are going to be somewhat resentful of this, and, there may be some changes and so on. But the idea that corporations are somehow massively separate from employees, that if corporations pay less in taxes, that they're just going to hand out all of these profits to all of these executives who are going to turn it into liquid gold and bathe in it and shower in it. I mean, actually, golden showers, let's not. No, I don't want Matt Lauer writing in. So this idea that corporations, it's just ridiculous. You lower corporate taxes, and particularly if they can find a way to bring all of this trillions of dollars of American money overseas to bring it back, which, whether this will work or not, remains to be seen. But this is, of course, one of the reasons why corporations go overseas. Say, it's free trade, and but the fact that corporate taxes in America are about the highest in the world, well, that's one of the reasons why businesses go overseas. This is why they go to China, why they go to Mexico, and so on. Now, of course, you'll also hear that neither plan helps the lowest income families. The poor aren't even being helped by tax cuts. Oh. There's times when the chainsaw of truth should not be entirely allegorical, but we'll keep it civilized and rational. So here's a quick reason why these tax cuts don't particularly help lower income families. That's because more than 70 million Americans don't make enough money to pay taxes. So, you can't really cut taxes on people who don't pay taxes. I literally cannot believe the things that I have to say. Believe me, brothers and sisters, I cannot believe the things I have to say on, we're reducing the price of hockey equipment for people who don't buy hockey equipment. We're reducing the cost of sunscreen for agoraphobic shut-ins. Matthew McConaughey when he's preparing for a role. So, yeah, it doesn't really cut taxes on the poor because the poor don't contribute enough to society economically to end up paying taxes. So, now, people say both plans increase the deficit by almost $1.5 trillion over the next 10 years. If people could figure out what the economy was going to be like 10 years from now, we'd all be robot automatons populating the Marxist mommy fantasies of the resource-based economy gurus, and central planning could work. So, when people say, well, this is how much these tax changes are going to affect the deficit 10 years from now, all you have to do is say, okay, quick, tell me what's the price of Apple stock in 5 minutes. Come on, dummy. Tell me, well, okay, forget, what's the price of Amazon stock tomorrow? Just write it down. Beautiful. What's the price of gold going to be? What's Bitcoin going to be? Just, 10 minutes from now. Because, you can do 10 years, 10 minutes. Someone says, I can lift 500 pounds over my head. It's like, okay, here's a pencil. Give me a break. Voodoo economics, as long as the state's involved in the economy, it's all voodoo economics. It's like trying to have physics when somebody's playing around with the sliders for physical properties and powers like God mode. I don't know, I can make gravity attract or repel based on this slider now. Give me objective physics. Now, government's continually interfering in things, so economics. It's all voodoo economics. It's all nonsense. So, yeah, when people say, well, in 10 years, the deficit's going to be I have more respect for tarot card readers. At least they give people some emotional benefit. But you have to be, like, genuinely, at some level, completely psychotic to think that you can predict what the economy is going to be doing in 10 years. But, you know, I can't make any money in the stock market, but that's just because I choose to use my powers for good. Now, there are a lot of financial institutions that love high taxes, right? So if you have a corporation, I mean, even if it's just your own personal corporation, right? You open up a bank account, and then what happens is you make a bunch of money goes into the corporation, and if personal taxes are high, you're going to keep a lot of that money in the bank. You're not going to withdraw it. You're not going to spend it on capital improvements or whatever it is. You're going to leave that money in the bank, because if you take it out, you get taxed at the personal tax rate, whereas the corporate rate is often lower. So banks love high taxes because you keep your money in the bank, which gives them more to loan out and more stability and all of that. So again, there's lots of financial institutions that hate lower taxes. So when people say, well, these tax cuts aren't going to help the poor, if they're on the left, then you just say, okay, well, what's your view on mass third world immigration? And if they're like, its diversity is our strength, then it's like, well, then shut up, because you don't care about the poor. Unskilled immigration harms the poor enormously, particularly blacks and Hispanics. So if you're into third world immigration, don't talk to me about how the tax cuts don't help the poor, because you don't care about the poor. And if you didn't care about the deficits under Obama, who doubled the debt, if you don't care about deficits under Obama, then don't talk to me about how this may contribute to deficits. Nobody knows. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's madness. Now, here's the important thing to understand. Why are the Democrats opposing this? Because, so there was this old argument that came out of the left, the more extreme left in the 19th century, and they said, to get to the magic socialist or communist society, here's what needs to happen. You need to go from feudalism to capitalism, and then when capitalism self-destructs, then you get socialism, you get communism. It's all beautiful. And so you can't go from feudalism to socialism. You have to go through capitalism. So you should try and get capitalism implemented in your societies, because that's what's necessary to get. It's the portal. It's the door. You have to go through capitalism to get to socialism. And so a lot of the early socialists were very, very keen on establishing capitalism in societies, because that's how you get to socialism. However, interesting, funny story, capitalism didn't fail on its own. In fact, capitalism was enormously successful. Enormously. Like, in the history of humanity, there has been no better or greater boon to the human planet than the free market. There's nothing that comes close. Nothing that comes close. And no greater curse than the hijacking of the wealth produced by the free market in order to serve central planning, socialism, leftism, totalitarianism of every stripe and hue, from fascism to communism. And so leftists used to want the market to be implemented, and they used to want the free market, and they didn't like interference in the free market because they wanted the inevitable logic of the free market collapsing in on itself. Like, if you want to build a new house and there's a house there already, well, you want the house. The house is going to have to crash, right? The house is going to fall down. It's a lot easier, right? Then you can just scoop it out and make the new thing, right? So this changed when capitalism succeeded enormously. And so what happens now is leftists believed that the market would fail on its own. The market did not fail on its own, but instead helped the poor and did all the stuff that Marxism claimed it wanted to do. Raised workers' wages, provided safer work environments over time, and capitalism in the 19th century, as I talked about recently with Tom Woods, capitalism ended slavery because, I mean, there were moral reasons as well, but the reason why the tens of thousands of years long ancient curse of human slavery ended was because in the free market, a slave is not very valuable. Because a slave is like a piece of string. You push it and it stops. It doesn't have any motive of its own. And so workers who are responding to incentives are much more profitable than slaves who are responding to punishment. And so capitalism ended child labor, capitalism emancipated women in many ways, capitalism ended slavery, capitalism, more than doubled workers' wages and their consumption of calories. Human populations exploded. And don't forget, and then I don't want to minimize this, capitalism produced the kind of wealth that allowed governments to pillage and appropriate that wealth and use the wealth generated by the free market as collateral for wars and subjugations and imperialism. So the problem was there was still too much government when capitalism produced all of this wealth. It could be harnessed, right? And so it's actually fascinating, almost psychologically or sociologically, that almost to the last dollar, the wealth generated by the 19th century free market was destroyed by the family warfare of governments running World War I. Almost down to the last dollar. All the wealth that was created was wiped out and destroyed. And so when you have a free market, it feeds the state. It feeds freedom, it feeds the individual, it feeds the state. So leftists no longer want the market to be implemented and to be free to fail on its own. Now they want the market to fail. They want the market to fail. And like the woman I talked about at the beginning, that she's paranoid, believed people were out to get her, couldn't be talked out of it because she'd rather be miserable than wrong. And so the problem with the tax cuts for the left is that they'll work. See, the problem is not that they'll add to the deficit. They don't care about that. The problem is not that they'll harm the poor. They don't care about that because they're importing all these people from the third world. Harming the poor, they're importing all of these H-1B visa people. They're very keen on that, as are the rhinos, as are the big corporations. So they don't care about the poor. They don't care about debts. They don't care about deficits. They do care that the market is going to succeed, and the market will succeed. Tax cuts, as they say, well, tax cuts automatically lead to deficits, which is nonsense. Now, Reagan did this. Like Reagan, I think, he cut a lot of taxes, but the federal government grew by 2/3 under his watch. So if you're going to cut taxes, then you're going to cut spending. And the idea that spending is this physics, and I know that there's a lot of stuff that's outside, like mandated spending, that's really, really tough to do anything about when it comes to Congress. But the idea that government spending is just this physics, you can't change it. We have to cover the spending. It's ridiculous. If your income goes down, you cut your spending. But I've had times in my life where I've lived real close to the bone because either my income is very low because I was in college or doing grad school, or because I was in debt for a variety of reasons. Then you eat home. You don't go anywhere. You keep your entertainment as cheap as humanly possible. And when I was a teenager in my early to mid-teens, played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. Why? I was broke, working 3 jobs, been on my own, paying my own bills with others since I was 15 without parents, supervision, control, security, income. So you cut back. And so this idea tells you a lot about this mentality. Well, if taxes go down, deficits will automatically get larger. No, you just cut spending. But they don't want to cut spending. Why are people so incensed about tax cuts? Because they rely on government income. It's not that complicated. You are their livestock, and farmers are not happy when their livestock break free. When the cows say, nope, no, you can't have 50% of my milk. You can only have 45% of my milk. I'm keeping some of my milk for my own damn babies. So farmers get really mad when the livestock don't want to produce for them. The livestock want to keep stuff for themselves. So everyone who's dependent on government for their income, tax cuts are terrifying to them because it interferes with the flow of goods that are coming their way. They don't care about ethics. They don't care about virtue. They don't care about integrity. They don't care about property rights. They don't care about basic human virtues. They care about getting their conveyor belt of free stuff. And tax cuts represent a potential diminishment in the amount of free stuff they might get from the government, which gives them some basic human responsibility in adulthood, which apparently they are allergic to. So, yeah, everybody who's railing against tax cuts is either profiting from free stuff personally, like they get free stuff from the government, or they're profiting from it politically in that they get to offer those stolen goods to other people in return for votes. So it's another one of these clear dividing lines. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. And why should you? It's a little thing we call the truth.
Stepan Molyneux, you can check him out on YouTube, subscribe. Now, we already know any tax plan that comes up, there's going to be a lot of negative stuff in it. I don't know of anybody that's actually been, trying to put out things that would benefit everybody. It's benefit one side and throw the other side under the bus. Hence why your income shouldn't be taxed. Because once they're able to tax your income, it becomes a pick a side choice. And like I was saying earlier in the broadcast at the beginning, you're being forced, well, the government's choosing whether you're going to eat the rotten apple or the rotten orange. Now, as someone that doesn't make a whole lot of money, of course I'm not considered poor, but I don't, I don't make great money at all. If I made any less, I would probably be considered poor. But that comes to the whole, fact that government still doesn't want to raise the poverty level. I want to say that they still hold the poverty level at $15,000 a year. And I guess, 15,000 a year is poor, but in today's world, 20,000, 25,000 a year, you might not be, sleeping in your car, but at the same time, you're not able to progress. I think that's where the poverty level should be really put at. Can I do more with what I got? And the thing is that the reason why they don't raise the poverty level, well, even if you don't make that much money a year, you can go get a business loan and start a business. Oh, yeah, I could do that. But if you look at the most successful people, they tend not to take too many loans. Unless you're Donald Trump, and then you just get a small, $1 million loan from your father. Well, you're not talking about grabbing, getting a loan from your parent. You're talking about getting one from the bank. A lot of well-to-do off people, they were able to work a normal job, nothing special. They weren't like super, the engineer that designed the brick. No, these were people that, they worked a regular job. They were able to pay their bills and save up a little bit of money. And then after that, they were able to take that little bit of money they saved up, invest it in something, start off small, and gradually get bigger. Because their ideas were good enough that they lasted. They were able to grow a business. But now, today, well, you can just go get a business loan for, $100,000, even though you make $20,000 a year. And your bills are, close to, $15,000, $16,000 a year. And that's just bills. That's not, any enjoyment like that extra, I swung by Starbucks a couple times and grabbed a coffee from Starbucks. Or, hey, I actually went out to the bar a couple times. bills can sink someone that makes 20,000 just by increase, which I know people that had to go through this where, you know, bills kept going up, but their wages weren't going up to the point that they started having to cut back. Well, instead of keeping my house at 72, now I keep it at 69 because I can't afford, you know, the bills. I sit in the dark all night long because, well, I don't want to turn my lights on. I can't afford it anymore. Luckily here I've seen my electricity finally start going down a little bit. But you understand it. A lot of people will go through it. And the thing is, this tax plan doesn't hurt the poor. This tax plan actually hits the lower middle class the worst. The people that, and I'm not talking about the lower middle class that works for someone and plans to continue to work for someone. I'm talking about the lower middle class that they're like, you know, to get beyond where I am, I'm going to, you know, start my own business. I got great ideas. I got too many great ideas to sit here, continue to work for someone else and make mediocre wages. I want to start a business. Well, this tax plan is going to hurt those people. This is going to hurt the entrepreneur. It's not going to hurt the big corporations. It's going to help, or it's going to hurt the people that are trying to come up in this world. Not the people that get the handouts. Not the poor people that make 20,000 a year, have 4 kids, and somehow, you know, get 10,000 or 8,000 back in their, you know, taxes. Not going to hurt you. And this tax plan, I think that what we need to do is get rid of the tax and the welfare programs. People are like, what about all the people that are starving? Well, you know, I'm sorry, but I've been around long enough to know that if I got hungry, I could go somewhere and get free food. It's just, I would not go unfed. So, you know, it's one of those deals that it's a lot of hoopty-ha from people that use this as a way to hold power. They keep getting you voting to take money away from rich, give it to the poor, and, you know, rob Paul to pay Peter. But you never get anywhere in life. Your family never, you know, you're continually caught in the struggle. Stop asking for a babysitter. Stop asking for government to be your daddy. Tell government to get the hell out of your way and let you prosper. And it's funny because I see a lot of the poor people are the ones that vote for the people to give them free stuff, but then they complain because they can't get up in the world. You voted for it. You wanted the free crap. You got the free crap. You can't complain because you're not coming up in the world. Oh, my apartment's paid for. I got food stamps and I got 3 kids. I can't come up in the world. Well, taking it, you know, you barely work. You got 3 kids and you have a 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom apartment that you don't pay for, electricity bill that's paid for, and food stamps. I think you're doing pretty damn well. I've had to go without eating for days. I didn't go and ask for handouts. I did something to get myself out of the situation. I didn't ask for someone else's hand for help. I offered my hand for help. A lot of people get that mixed up, you know. offer your hand for help, give that homeless person a bag of food, and, that's offering your hand for help is saying that I'm willing to work for what I get. It's not giving other people free stuff. That's not helping anybody out. Helping people out is providing for yourself, because that takes the load off of someone else's shoulder. But, again, a lot of this is just a big mess, and I don't try to get too far into it. I don't think I'll have enough time for this. Let's see here. Yeah, we should have enough time for this. Okay. Here we go. This one.
Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here.
It's from We Are Change, Jason Burmis. Testimony from the Prince of Darkness. This is what Eric Prince may be telling the House Intelligence Committee behind closed doors about Clinton scandals. But we'll go ahead and get into this real quick.
Reporting for wearechange.org. And today we're going to talk about Eric Prince, who's about to testify before the House Intelligence Committee in a closed room session. Now, for those not familiar with Eric Prince, he is the founder of Blackwater. He's an ex-Navy SEAL. And yes, Blackwater was, and really still is, because it's only undergone name changes, and really in name only, the largest private military group in the world. And I am at odds with many of the things that Eric Prince is involved in. However, some of the information that Prince has provided in the last year plus seems to be on point and truthful. He further exposed the Clintons' relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, it had been reported before this that Bill Clinton had traveled at least 26 times on Epstein's private jet. Now, let's not forget that Epstein had to plead guilty to only one count of being with an underage prostitute when state prosecutors identified at least 35 underage victims. Think about that for a second, folks. Prince discussed how Hillary Clinton had been to the island at least 6 times.
Including the fact that Hillary went to this sex island with convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. Bill Clinton went there more than 20 times. Hillary Clinton went there at least 6 times. And there is all kinds of criminal culpability through all the emails they've seen of that $650,000, including money laundering, underage sex, pay for play, and of course, plenty of proof of inappropriate handling, sending, receiving of classified information up to SAP level special access programs.
Now, Mother Jones has written a smear piece about the upcoming Prince testimony, claiming that Prince set up a backdoor channel for Donald Trump to be engaged with, of course, the Russian government and Vladimir Putin. Now, this article also claims Prince is lying about the Clinton Uranium-1 scandal with Russia and claims that that theory has been debunked. Of course, it claims a lot of things have been debunked in this article that haven't. Now, this article also mentions the quote-unquote stolen Podesta emails and falls right in line with the false Russian narrative, therefore calling Prince a liar when he assured us that the hack did not come from Russia. Well, there's a ton of evidence out there now pointing to Seth Rich being the leaker, the murdered DNC staffer that police claimed was a botched robbery. However, even Seymour Hersh, who was recorded unbeknownst to him, confirmed he believed that Seth Rich was the leaker.
This is according to the FBI report. What they find is he makes first of all, you have to know some basic facts. One of the basic facts is there's no DNC or protested email that exists beyond May 22nd, May 21st, 22nd. It's the last email from either one of those groups. I just say it says late spring, early summer. He makes contact with WikiLeaks. They found what he had done. He had submitted a series of documents, of emails, some juicy emails from the DNC. And all I know is that he offered a sample, an extensive sample, I'm sure dozens of emails, and said, I want money. That later, WikiLeaks did get the password. He had a Dropbox, a protected Dropbox, which isn't hard to do. I mean, you don't have to be a wizard, IT wizard. He was certainly, he's not a dumb kid.
And now that we have Donna Brazile alluding to this fact as well is overwhelming. She says that she feared for her life after Seth Rich was murdered, and she even dedicated her book to him. Now, earlier this month, the Daily Caller also did a very, very good piece on the Clinton-Epstein relationship. In fact, they contacted the Clinton Library through their media department to try to get some answers on what their relationship exactly was and what Bill was doing on those planes and on that island. Of course, they refused to comment. However, what I found even more interesting is that they linked to an article written by Gawker, the initial flight records that showed that Clinton had traveled on one of Epstein's planes with actor Kevin Spacey. Recently, many people have come out with allegations of sexual abuse by Kevin Spacey, even involving underage boys. Well, this article, published by Gawker and written by Nick Bryant, was actually blocked by Google. Yes, Chrome warned me that this site wasn't safe. Here's a shot of it, folks. I'm not making this up. That's how badly they don't want you to know this information. The article goes on to describe Epstein's relationship with lawyer Alan Dershowitz and Larry Summers, a close Clinton confidant. Not only that, Nick Bryant is the author of The Franklin Scandal, an amazing book on how deep some of these pedophile rings actually go. As always, if you like this video, please share it on social media, hit that subscribe button, follow me on Twitter at Jason Burmis, and go to wearechange.org. It's only through your financial support that reports like this one are possible.
Now, again, that was We Are Change, Jason Burmis, wearechange.com or .org, and We Are Change on YouTube. Check them out, subscribe. Now, we've talked about the Clintons so many times. It's one of those deals that there's so much questions and corruption surrounding the Clintons. I'm glad they're not in government. Our government is already corrupt enough. And, having the Clintons back in, might as well just, shoot the idea of America, because it definitely would have been killed. Now, the deal with it, though, is as there's testimony, as there's investigation going on, the media silent. It's pretty funny how allegations with no evidence are being levied against Trump by the media that stirs a investigation based on false things that the Clinton and DNC campaign paid for. And then when there's an investigation going on the Clintons that have to do with the Clintons and their corruption, nothing. This should be the top story, the Clintons are finally done, all the dirt's coming out about the Clintons. We should have known something up, Donna Brazile pits us out. You know, Trump's a a-hole, but the Clintons are even worse. You know, something. Nothing. So really, the media, the mainstream media, has turned themselves nothing but entertainment. They are not news. They are not, you know, unbiased. At least my bias is to an ideology of freedom. And I don't care who claims to be for freedom. If you're doing dumb crap, you're not for it. I don't care if you call yourself a Republican or Democrat, or a Libertarian, or a Constitutionalist, or a Green Party member. I'm basing it on what you do. But most of the population tends to want to go, oh, I'm Democrat. Oh, I'm Republican. I'll vote for Clinton because she's a candidate. No, screw that. I told you we didn't have any good options. And evidently I was right. I hope the Libertarian Party gets rid of, you know, their man there. Gary Johnson is not a Libertarian. And really, he's a bad actor. And you can see how he takes on issues. And he thought he could ride the marijuana train. I'll get all the people on the left that were Bernie Sanders people if I talk about the marijuana. No, because you have a whole bunch of commies that really believe in, you know, communism and socialism, and, you know, because their teachers told them it's good. They were taught to believe it was good. Never mind the evidence that shows overwhelmingly that socialism does not work. It always leads to some type of authoritarian government. Why? Because when Bob's job is twice as hard as fucking Jeff's job, you guys are going to get paid the same. You'll get all the same food. Oh, screw that. I want a job like that guy over there that works half as hard. I ain't doing this anymore. That's where the authoritarian government, whether it be fascism, communism, Marxism, whatever you want to, you know, call it, it all leads to the same thing. Authoritarian dictatorship. Because for that socialism to work, you're going to have to force people to do it. Guy cleaning out septic tanks and getting the same thing that the guy that sits at office and enters numbers into a computer, when they're working for the same thing, the only way you're going to keep that guy cleaning out that septic tank is to put a gun to his head. What happens? He'll clean out the septic tank. He's now, instead of taking a couple hours, he's going to take all day. I'm working as fast as I can. Give me some wages that guy over there. It just doesn't work. There was an article I didn't get to. I don't know what time we got. Yeah, I probably can cover part of it. Well, we are kind of running up against the clock right now. But there's an article. And this one is out of the Daily Mail. Heavy marijuana user showing up at ER scromiting, throwing up and screaming. It says chronic cannabis users are at risk of experiencing a horrifying new condition that is being reported at hospitals across the country. Scromiting. doctors say, is becoming an all too familiar sight at emergency rooms, with patients screaming and vomiting as they turn up for help. The condition, called cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, is not properly understood, but medical experts believe the symptoms appear from individuals using or consuming heavy amounts of marijuana over a long period of time. Dr. Amy Mullen, an emergency room physician at UC Davis Medical Center in Sacramento, said she has seen a rise in cases since California legalized recreational marijuana last November. She expects to see a further rise after commercial sales are permitted starting in January. Now, I'm not going to read this whole article, but they're calling it a syndrome. Well, I don't think it's a syndrome. And one, people showing up vomiting and screaming, saying, I smoked marijuana, or, ate marijuana, or whatever. Just because it's legalized, all of a sudden it's happening. That's funny, because from middle school all through college, I witnessed many people consume extreme amounts of marijuana. Never seen any of them just start screaming because they were high. The only time I've seen someone vomit over it is when they were either drinking or they ate something that just didn't settle with them. One guy ate a fruit pie or something, one of those little Hostess fruit pies. Well, that hit his stomach wrong way and threw up. Didn't scream while he was throwing up, but did throw up. Still no screaming. I got an idea. Maybe it's when people are willing to buy baked goods made with marijuana with no actual dosage amount, or people making their own. So I'm sorry, if you take a pound of marijuana, which who knows how long that pound would take you to smoke, you mix it down and make a batch of brownies with it. You ate half of the batch of brownies, you just ingested half a pound of marijuana. I don't think it's a syndrome. I think it's a reaction from overdosing on marijuana. Many people don't know what an overdose on THC and other cannabinoids would look like, because in the past it's mainly been smoked. And when it has been eaten, back in the day, people would just literally throw the marijuana into a blender, like, maybe an ounce or two. So it stayed in its form, just minced up, ground up into brownies. They weren't taking pounds of, making a THC cannabinoid butter out of it and then using that to make one batch of brownies. It's like an ounce to make a batch of brownies. So we haven't seen what overdose on marijuana could do until now, I believe. And we've seen this in younger people that have gotten a hold of treats where they ate a couple gummy bears that probably equaled, a quarter ounce of marijuana. Okay, they're throwing up. Maybe they ingested too much THC. But again, in the medical, this Amy Mullen, she's a physician, and because she sees people show up at her emergency room, now she's an expert on this. I think not. But, that's all for the birds. I want to thank everybody for tuning in to Anti-Tyranny News and UCY.TV. Stay tuned here on UCY UCY.tv. Great broadcast coming up after this. And I want to urge people, go to UCY.tv and